Your phone buzzes at 11 p.m. with a request. You look at the screen, feel a knot form in your stomach, and let out a heavy sigh, before typing back, "Sure, I can handle that." We instinctively alter our words and sacrifice our limited energy for a specific psychological payoff, managing another person's reaction. We suppress our own exhaustion to keep them happy. Consider Maria, the quintessential go-to person at her office. She stays late for extra assignments, answers emails at midnight, and remains constantly available to every friend and family member who calls. Society rewards this behavior. We celebrate boundaryless availability as a sign of dedication and personal value, often equating a lack of limits with professional success. Chasing those rewards creates a dangerous split. To maintain an accommodating exterior, you have to wall off your actual internal capacity, performing a version of yourself that is disconnected from your true physical and emotional state. Keeping those parts of yourself segmented takes intense psychological effort. Every time you project a pleasant facade while feeling drained, you actively suppress your own reality. Over time, this suppression manifests as physical illness. For Maria, the friction of constant compliance eventually led to chronic insomnia and severe migraines. This chart tracks that biological progression. As we plot boundaryless tasks along the bottom timeline, we see a dramatic, exponential spike in cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone. Chronic people-pleasing acts as a behavioral pattern that actively degrades the immune system and erodes long-term biological health. To break this cycle, we have to recognize that overcommitment often functions as a psychological defense mechanism. This defense is frequently rooted in childhood conditioning or a fear of rejection. The brain learns to equate safety with compliance, wiring itself to avoid conflict at any cost. We see the cost of that compliance in the transactional model of stress. When heavy blocks of external demands drop onto the scale without sufficient internal resources to balance them, the system breaks. This specific resource imbalance forces the brain to misinterpret everyday social favors as literal threats to survival. Trapped in this persistent threat state, the nervous system remains on high alert. This constant tension accelerates the body's transition from normal fatigue into total systemic burnout. Interpreting social demands as survival threats causes profound psychological damage, making a state of total exhaustion inevitable. Reversing this damage requires a clinical framework like cognitive behavioral therapy. CBT provides the tools to purposefully dismantle the reflex of automatic compliance. A primary strategy is practicing the pause. By purposefully interrupting the knee-jerk reaction to say yes, you create space to evaluate whether you actually have the capacity to help. It also requires waiting to be explicitly asked for help. You have to resist the urge to jump in and solve someone else's problem just to quiet your own anxiety. Communicating these limits involve replacing apologies with direct I statements. Instead of, "I'm so sorry, but I can't," you simply state, "I need to prioritize other responsibilities right now." Each time you use these tools to hold a boundary, you provide your brain with evidence that you can survive a moment of social friction. This repeated practice slowly untethers your sense of self-worth from your perceived usefulness to others. As Maria applied these strategies, her outward actions began to match her internal capacity. Her shoulders drop and her tension fades. As she moves toward a state of emotional integration, her relationships actually deepened during this process. They shifted from a foundation of forced compliance to one of honest boundaries and mutual respect. Eliminating hidden resentment is the only way to sustain authentic connections over the long term. Saying no is a direct act of self-prioritization. It is a necessary acknowledgement that your time and mental health are worth protecting. When we ignore these biological signals to satisfy others, we choose to prioritize external expectations over our own physical health. This choice turns chronic agreement into a form of self-abandonment, eventually driving the body straight into biological burnout. Researchers at Harvard Medical School classify this behavior under a concept known as segmentation. This occurs when a person divides their consciousness, actively suppressing their true feelings of exhaustion or resentment just to perform an outward act of compliance. This division is usually driven by a fear of conflict and rejection,
patterns often rooted in childhood conditioning, where being good meant being perfect. Take the clinical case of Maria, a manager who acted as her department's permanent shock absorber. By accepting every extra shift and answering emails at midnight, she pushed her nervous system until it broke, resulting in chronic insomnia and severe migraines. Maria's experience is part of a documented, widespread epidemic of emotional exhaustion, frequently covered by major outlets like the New York Times. If the habit of automatic agreement is actively destroying our physical and cognitive capacity, we must redefine what saying no actually means. When people think about setting a boundary, they often picture a harsh, aggressive confrontation. They worry that setting a limit makes them uncaring or difficult. In the framework established by Brené Brown, a strategic no functions as an essential preservation of personal integrity. Clear boundaries are the prerequisite for healthy, sustainable connection. We replace reactive people-pleasing with values-based alignment. Filtering requests through a decision tree model focused on core priorities, the reactive branches of the tree collapse. We are left with a single, clear path. This directly reduces decision fatigue. Boundary setting is an act of courage. It shifts you out of a state of panicked reaction and into a position of thoughtful, self-directed control. You can put this into practice using the pause. This deliberate act creates temporal space between receiving a request and giving your response, allowing the moment to expand before you commit your energy. Another effective strategy is simply waiting to be asked. When a friend or colleague shares a problem, volunteering to fix it often ignores their actual need, which is usually just empathy and validation. Setting boundaries is a mechanical skill. Like any other trained ability, it becomes more natural with consistent daily practice. The immediate rewards are physiological. By stopping the continuous bleed of emotional energy, stress hormones drop, and the body begins to restore its baseline health. In the workplace, self-preservation is the most effective tool for preventing total burnout, allowing you to remain productive over the long term. According to Dr. Susan David, an expert in emotional agility, environments that respect these boundaries actually generate higher-level problem-solving and innovation. Clearly communicated limits establish the foundation for mutual trust and honesty, rather than creating friction in a relationship. Ultimately, these boundaries allow you to operate as an integrated self. This is a state where all parts of your identity, including your limitations and your discomforts, are allowed to exist simultaneously. You no longer have to suppress pieces of yourself to fit the situation. You can stop offering the world a fractured, exhausted identity and show up as a unified version of yourself. Establishing the capacity to say no ultimately secures the finite energy required to offer a genuine, enthusiastic yes to the commitments that truly matter.